Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian.
Welcome back to Tracking That, a channel where we try to track what liberals are saying, but end up not being able to as usual. Now, at first glance, that statement might enrage you and make you call Ann Coulter a racist like everybody is on Twitter right now. But I listened to the majority of the podcast between the two so I could have her decipher her opinion on that subject, because I knew she was going to elaborate. And yeah, while I admit Ann Coulter might not be the best Republican of all time, a lot of the time she has Trump derangement syndrome, but she says what she thinks without a filter, and sometimes we need an Ann Coulter to dog the establishment. And what I witnessed in this conversation between the two is two intellectuals having a respectful disagreement on who should be able to be president or not. And this is something I think we need to have more of in this country, respectful disagreement. And this makes me like Vivek Ramaswamy even more than I have before because of the way he was able to give her a chance instead of like a CNN host interrupting her every 2 seconds and calling her racist. And I think that even though Ann Coulter stuck with her guns and her opinion wasn't changed, she definitely opened herself to more of Vivek's mindset because really the core of the issue is how long should your ancestry lineage have been in the United States to qualify you for president? If you've read the Harry Potter books or seen the movies, there's certain wizards that think that magic should only be taught in the blood of wizards that is pure, or ancestors that is 100% known to be magic, with 0% of it being muggle-born or non-magic folk. And I think Ann Coulter is entitled to that opinion, having a multi-generational lineage while being in the United States. I might disagree with it. I think partly she wanted to say something outlandish in the beginning, as like a buzzword to get attention. She thinks there's a chance that because there isn't a multi-generational American blood in Vivek or someone else like a second-generation American or someone that's born of an immigrant, there could be an act of disloyalty. Fine, whatever. I disagree with that opinion. I'm not going to send the cancel culture mob on her. But the reason I think she's wrong is because, look at all the Democrats. There's been people here for generations, but some of them are willing to destroy their college campus for a war that has nothing to do with them, destroying World War I memorials, replacing USA flags with Palestine's or Israel's, putting Trump in prison to influence the election, and yes, I'll use the Democrats' argument, destroy democracy. So I have no problem with putting someone like Vivek in the White House. But I think maybe I'm just in a forgiving mood that this conversation was necessary to have, and I know activists are going to jump the gun and trash Ann Coulter because it's easy to call her racist or say her career has ended because it's going to make them feel better about themselves, and they're not going to watch the whole interview, they're just going to watch just part of the clip. She has the perspective of a lot of people in this country, likely not the majority, but a fair bit. Also, this is just my opinion, and maybe this is where you can cancel me, but I know a lot of people that say racist comments, some that even said the N-word, some that have implicit biases, but that doesn't make them a racist person. Wow, huh? I know that's such a ridiculous concept, but please stay with me. We'll work through this together. A good example is walking down a street that is trashed up. All the businesses are closed with someone of a different race with a hoodie walking towards you. You can't see their face, but their hands are in their pocket. Is your heart going to race? If you have a gun on you, are you going to put your hands closer towards it? You're likely saying to yourself, I don't want to be near that type of person. Is that racist? Come on, guys, let's use common sense. We're judging that person based on how they appear, and if they look like a thug or gangster, our implicit biases potentially save us. So let's get into this conversation these two had.
Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian.
On that axis of citizenship, what does ethnicity have to do with the matter? And I think you would be well served, and maybe this could be a great platform for you to do it, to make the case for why that, what you put at WASP basis for the American identity, how is that relevant against a backdrop of which you got the WASP seventh generation descendant of some rich guy on the Upper East Side in Brooklyn that pretends to hate this country because it's the cool thing to do, versus somebody who came here as the kid of immigrants, but pledges loyalty to this country. If loyalty was the axis for citizenship, aren't you actually committing a bit of a sin, reverting back to a conception of citizenship that has nothing to do with loyalty in the first place?
Well, I will say many of those seventh generations WASP I definitely hate. I know we have a lot of really, really bad ones, but like I said, anyone can adopt this. I guess what I just said, if any of your children marry a DAR, I would definitely vote for them for president. It's not so much, it's more, president is different. You have to be natural born, as you know, which, by the way, Ted Cruz is not, basically because of what you were just describing. Where is the loyalty? So ambassadors' children born actually in the United States are not natural born, but that's a total sidebar. I've gotten
It's actually not a sidebar at all. I mean, the fact that ambassadors' kids born in the United States are not citizens is actually an overlooked fact. If a kid of an ambassador from Mexico does not enjoy birthright citizenship, neither does somebody who's in this country illegally.
Yes.
Birthright citizenship either, right? So that's actually a quite important logical chain. But I go back to, forget even because you get to this constitutional, legalistic, and I like that stuff, but we'll just put that to one side for a second. But the essence of American identity, I think there's a part of you that believes, I think you basically said so, that part of that identity is tied to a certain Anglo-Saxon heritage of this country, and that you're more American if you've vested into that over the course of generations that are descended from that, rather than somebody who came here with a civic commitment to the country, went through the naturalization process, and then their kids may, in some real sense of the word, and the reason I respect you is that you actually have the, so to speak, the stones to be able to say it, is that you think that there's a difference in the status of the Americanness of that person. And that's where I think I disagree with you, but I want to give you the opportunity to air the case for that strand of national identity that I think we ought to just smoke out and be able to have a discussion about.
Well, the reason I mentioned the natural born citizen is I'm only talking about president of the United States. So obviously the framers thought there was something different about being president, the one man who holds one entire branch of government in his hands. It isn't to say anything about who could be a Supreme Court justice, and they have a little more power than the president, by the way, or secretary of state or governor, or obviously senator or any other position, but president, and I guess by extension, vice president. That is something that the framers did think was so important that you had this deep generation-wide loyalty. And why would they think that? Well, as many said at the time, freedom is a wonderful thing, but it's a very hard thing to learn. And one of the things, and I cite these polls in my book, Adios America, it's striking and depressing that lots of our very best immigrants just do not understand the Second Amendment. They do not get the First Amendment. And you take polls of them, should you have a right to bear arms? Should hate speech be banned? And it's noticeable that large percentages of immigrants and children of immigrants really don't get that. And I think that is the point of having natural born citizen only for president, that this is a really delicate thing we have, this freedom to bear arms and there being no such thing as hate speech. And it's just an additional little safeguard.
Here's my question for you on that is, because the left is actually very good at using what I call proxy logic. I reject proxy logic, but the left is actually very good at this. They'll say we need diversity in a corporate institution. So we're going to select for diversity of thought, not by screening candidates for the diversity of their thoughts, but by screening them for the diversity of their skin color, which is a really curious thing. If you care about diversity of thought in a boardroom, why do you care about diversity of shades of melanin or the diversity of your X or Y chromosomes? You could have a room full of people that look really similar to one another and think very differently, or a room full of people that look really different and think the same, which is much of what you get in corporate America today. So that's what I call reasoning by proxy, where one of the things I've often said to the left is if you want to select for diversity of thought, screen candidates for the diversity of their thoughts. If you want to select for diversity of experience, screen candidates for the diversity of their experiences. That might be a better way of achieving your stated goal than to use the logic of proxy. So again, the constitutional questions to aside, I think we're talking about a cultural matter relating to national identity. My question for you is, I worry that you may, I say this respectfully, maybe making some of the same category error that our friends on the left make to say that, yes, it is shameful that immigrants and kids of immigrants often have no idea what the heck the Bill of Rights is actually about, that the Second Amendment exists not to protect some guy who wants to go sport hunting, but it's the one amendment that puts the teeth in all of the other ones. These are basic concepts that many immigrants, first-generation Americans, and for that matter, I can say it from having gone to school with many of the waspy varieties that populate places like Harvard too, where I've gone, goes for any sixth or seventh generation American too. It's shameful, the level of civic absence of knowledge, a black hole of understanding of the history of our country. And I guess my question for you is, why solve for that through what I would argue is a pretty poor proxy, whether or not you're talking about a safeguard? If there could be a safeguard to ensure that you have leaders in this country or citizens of this country that have a better understanding of that, I would love that safeguard. I personally believe that every high school senior should have to be able to pass a basic civics test, the one we ask immigrants to pass, before becoming a voting citizen of this country. Before you cast that ballot in a ballot box, you better darn know what branch of government the president leads. And yet, you actually have more people would fail the test that naturalized citizens are likely to pass who aren't even naturalized citizens. Why not solve for the actual target that you and I both care about, which is loyalty and an understanding of what you're actually pledging loyalty to, rather than using what I would argue is a left-like false proxy target that you use to solve for the same thing?
It isn't really true that the seventh generation WASPs are voting worse than the immigrants. One of the problems with the immigrants we've been taking in, actually probably any immigrant, but definitely 90% of legal immigrants come from the third world. They're used to authoritarian governments. They block votes. And every 4 years, I have to hear about how, no, I think we're going to take the Hispanic vote this year. I think we're going to get the Asian vote. No, you're not Republicans. Every election is decided by slight movements of the white vote. Now, the fact that the white vote is that close, yeah, okay, I hate 50% of them, but they're the ones who change their mind and look at the different candidates. It's much more easy to boss around people who have come from an authoritarian culture. And yes, take your point that this is, at least for this one position, president, you are looking at something other than just what the person actually believes. But nobody really knows what a person actually believes. So why not have a fail safe? I want to hear you say it. And I'd also be more comfortable if you're third generation and have some English or, British blood in you.